I left some of the most outrageous things for the end, and I'll never be able to get to all of them. So today I will take the least outrageous of those, but also the most difficult. And it's complicated, and I don't want people to get confused, and I don't want to get confused myself. So let me first tell you what I'm going to say, and then maybe it'll be easier to follow. It's not hard, but it gets complicated. Number one, Rabbi Javahari last week was absolutely correct. The Chazon Ish and the Chassam Sofer are saying two separate things. I don't see how you can conflate them. That's point number one. Point number two, I don't think there's a disagreement between them at all. And that's because I think that Chassam Sofer was dealing with one particular problem that had nothing to do with us. And he really didn't explain what he should have explained. He left that for the Chazon Ish. For the Chazon Ish incident, I think I'm not going to talk about the Chazon Ish and the Chassam Sofer today because we already did it this month. But when we did it this month, I purposely said I'm not going to talk about ribbis because that we're leaving for the end. But the Chazon Ish has a very brilliant economic exposition, the history of money and what money is all about. It could be published in an economics journal. He's absolutely right, and I don't think anybody can be chaylik on it. The Chassam Sofer had a problem, so he dealt with a problem. Agav, that's not what I want to talk about today. I think the Chassam Sofer got that wrong also. That's beside the point. It's not Nagayas. I'll show you why it's not Nagayas. Number two, which is a chidush. I've published it already in Mesivus Halocha, not in this context, and that is that if you want to be mechayev yourself something, you can be mechayev yourself one of two things. Either you can mechayev yourself something specifically, or you can be mechayev yourself a stam shibud bi'alma. Only doesn't make any difference because we have halacha of shavik kesef kekesef. If I mechayev myself widgets, so I don't have to pay you widgets, you don't get specific performance in halacha. Why? In this case, you don't get specific performance because Shavik Kesef is Kekesef. So it makes no difference. We'll come back to that point later in the course of what we're talking about. But basically, B'Yisod, there are two kinds of Schayvus. There's a Schayvus of a Chayfetz, and there's a Schayvus, it's a Shibud for the Chayfetz, which can be Yetze with Shavik Kesef. And there's a Shibud of Momen B'Alma, and you pay whatever you want. That's a different kind of Yischaivus. But again, I don't think except for ribbis. And ribbis is going to make a lot of difference. And number three, which is really where I'm heading, is that maybe before three, fiat money is money. And that the Chassam Sofer knew fiat money was money, and that's not what he's saying. He's saying something totally different. That's three. So now number four. Number four, U.S. greenbacks are something else. It's a new kind of moment. It's not fiat. I call it a hybrid. I made up the term. It's a new kind of a moment, and it's got its own gedorim, which I'll try to explain. And
the Federal Reserve notes, not talking about the gold certificates.
Of course, no money, our money, greenbacks. You know, what we use all the time. Okay, yeah, I think that's a new kind of bria, and I think it fits in very easily, but it's got to be defined. That's what makes it. It's a muvucha. So let me start from the beginning. The Chassam Sofer is number one. Everybody quotes one Chassam Sofer, but there are four Chassam Sofers. I'll give you the numbers. The first Chassam Sofer is Yeridei Kuf Lamed Daled, that everybody knows. Then there's another Chassam Sofer in Yeridei Simen Reish Pei Tes, which I don't think is important for us. And then there's a Chassam Sofer in Choshen Mishpat Kuf Pei Zayin. It's the last Chassam Sofer before the Hashmotis, not before the Likutei Chassam Sofer. The Hashmotis, the Choshen Mishpat. It's the last in the first seder of the numbers. The numbers go on, but they're called Hashmotis. And then there's something Evno Ezer Tov Kuv Vov, which I don't know what it's Negeas. It's not Negeas because it would take me forever to figure it out. He's talking about the value of Ksub in his days with different kinds of currencies back and forth, and no lumdus there, unless you understand what he's saying. There may be a lot of lumdus there, but he's giving me conversions one way, the other way. I'm sure there's a Revel PhD someplace for somebody who can go through all the Achronim Aribis and tell me what it is they're talking about, just explain what the currencies were, how one converts to another, doesn't convert, whatever. That's it. That's not my problem. But it's there, and for all I know, it has a relevance. I just haven't figured out the relevance. But it's there. So let's start from the Chassam Sofer. The Chassam Sofer, and again, it's hard to figure out it's hard for me to remember, not to figure out, which problem comes from which of these tshuvas, because primarily what we're concerned with is the one Chosh Mishpat, which I think is really Seis, so the one Yerdeya, and the one Yerdeya, but he raises the problems in all of them. As I understand it, the Chassam Sofer had a number of problems with regard to the banknotes of his time. His first problem was that it was a shtar shenim chal shibudai. And the first time I looked at it, I said, what's he talking about? This is not the mamram. I don't want to talk about mamram today. The mamram was a problem to Achronim, Picheis and Sivis. It was a shtar shenim chal shibudai. They were sending it, they were writing IOUs, or it was basically a bill of credit. But they were using it as a shtar, and then they were reusing it. And if you're going to a din Torah about the shtar, does that have a shtar? That's not a shtar. It's a shtar shenim chal shibudai. If you're talking about the melech, I don't know what the Chassam Sofer's problem is at all. The shtar, it's a shtar al Eitzer HaMelech, as he describes it. Franz Yosef, Freim Yossel, he wrote a little piece of paper saying that he's going to give the person who's holding this Meitzik Savzeh. That's why I call it the Mamram. The Meitzik Savzeh, he's going to give him so much and so much silver, Eitzer HaMelech, or gold coins, Eitzer HaMelech, whatever he's giving there. The first time I collect it, it's Nimchal Shibuda, I give it back to him, but he doesn't go print another one the next week. He uses the same one over again. So shtar I haven't heard that the Freim Yossel came to Bez and said, Shimna Rabbanim Tayoni Mumchim. I know I signed all of this, but I know Allah also. It's a shtar shenim chal shibudai, so I don't have to pay Yankel the money I promised him. He's not about in here. More important than that, I think some say into that too, which is why I don't understand what he's saying. Because in the second tshuva, in the end of Chosh Mishpat, they were dealing here with an interesting case. There was a case of two people who went to Wien, and they were sochrim, and one of them had 100, a bank for 100, whatever it was, and he wants change. So he took from Chaim, he took 10 times 10. Only it turns out in the end that he doesn't have the 100. He doesn't know what happened to the 100. So they're having now in Torah, he wants his 100, and he's Reuven. Shimon says, I gave you the 100. And no one is accusing the other of being a liar. I'm sorry, of being a ganav. They may be accusing the other of shading the truth a little bit and being megazim and telling you things bididomi, but chas v'sholem gezela. I know exactly what happened here, and I think the Chassam Sofer did ben Hashitas also. What happened here, you have two honest people, they're in the stanzia, it's clear it's the stanzia, and this is all happening at night, and they're putting money down on the table. It's the Chacham Tzvi with the heart, it's not there anymore. Kan Mosa Balchoiv Mokim Likvois Mosa Higia Mitzvah Liodi Vaikaimeno. They were going flying around. One of the going picked it up and put it in his pocket. So now I've got a problem. And these didn't. No one's trying to fool anybody. The only problem is they proved that something is missing because they each took, and they believe each other. Each took out his wallet and said, I came with such and such amount of money, and I spent so much and so much today, and this is what's left. I'm missing 100. And the other guy says, I came with so much money, and I spent so much, and this is what's left. I'm missing 100. Somebody's missing something here. Something's going on, but nobody's being chayish the other one on Geneva. The first one says, I gave it to you, and he says, not only did I give it to you, but I told you I'm giving it to you. I know what he wanted, so he added with that to make me a picheta for not remembering that he told me. I don't think it makes a difference to halacha. The other guy says, you never gave it to me, you never told me. Who is telling the whole truth? I don't know, but nobody's really lying here, and nobody is trying to cheat anybody. And that's, you got a shayla halacha. That's a fairly simple shayla. It's neni dein schayafti and neni dein paraiti. Now go figure it out. Who has the burden of proof, and who hasn't satisfied the burden of proof with these kindness? But then there's all the problems here. The first problem was that it's, what is this anyway? It's a shtar, and this he raises in the other ones also. It's a shtar shneim chushivuday, to which I shrug my shoulders and say, Franz Joseph isn't here claiming it's a shtar shneim chushivuday. Between us, we're all honest people, and he's using it over again, and we're going to pretend that it's not a shtar shneim chushivuday. What is our problem in halacha if that's an shtar? Yes, he starts off that ein bushvoim al shtoris, and it makes it sound as if we have shvuas. That's why this is the point I meant to make before. He makes it sound as if we're being mashbi on shtoris every day of the week. We're not. How many times was he ever mashbi on shtoris? And with all the shuvas and stuff in the Picheis Mishpat, I haven't seen one that deals with a shuv on shtoris. And he makes the point in this shuva without realizing that if he makes this point, he's got nothing more to talk about in the other shuvas. He says that when I go and I ask this guy from my hunter that he hasn't given me, I gave him 10 tens and he gave me the 100, I don't want the $100 bill. I want its value. I don't want the piece of paper. I don't care how you give it to me. You want to give me 10 tens back, I'll take that also. You want to give me shovek hesa, I'll even take that. I just don't want to work with nothing. I'm not a shamer. He wants his shtar back. When he doesn't get his shtar back, he gets nothing. So except for shmira, I don't know what difference it makes whether it's a shtar or it's not a shtar until Franz Joseph comes and says I don't have to pay. But he's not here. He's not claiming he doesn't have to pay. Everybody is pretending that it's perfectly valid shtar and can be good with the shtar. And that's he has a few more things like that. I don't understand even Lishitose what difference it makes. He claims that you can claim not only for Franz Joseph, but you can claim from his Yorshim. And if they're going to pay, why should they pay Chayvus Avihem, Mechetesa? I haven't heard them complaining either. They were happy to take the crown. This comes along with it. Apparently, they think it's a good deal for them. And here you're making a shibud that's called on the lodim. You can't make a shibud like that on the lodim. Won't work. Number 2 or 3, I lost guys already. How can I give it to somebody else? It's a shtar and he's ksivu masira. So I didn't give it to you. So what? Who cares whether I gave it to you or not? Nobody's claiming that it's worthless. If you come and you claim it's worthless, so you don't have anything. That's not what the dinteras are always about. We pretend. I'll talk about monopoly money afterwards. But as long as nobody is complaining, there's no dintera. So there was no ksiv masir. I wasn't marketed to you. So now what do you want? You're not coming with a chutzpah that gives back to me because there's no ksiv masir. It's not a shtar. I want the piece of paper back. That's not your taina. I admit I got the schayr from you, so I use something. So if you don't take this, I'll have to give you kesef v'zov. I don't have kesef v'zov. So what's this they're all about anyway? I don't know what he wants. Now, something else he has, which to me is also mind-boggling. He tells me, I'll prove to you that it's not l'raya sheba. I'll prove to you it's not a shtar. Because he tells me, I don't know Austro-Hungarian law. He's telling me that if I burn the banknote and they come with a sreifa, the Melech will give me a new banknote. Now he must have been living in America. I understand. I don't know these things. I'm not supposed to know them. But my impression is, if I'm wrong, you'll correct me. My impression is, if I take a banknote and I make ashes out of it, as long as you can read the serial number, 2 serial numbers on each banknote, if you can read them in the ashes, you can go to the bank and they'll give you a new one. Why not? They see it. It's absolute evidence. It can't be any other way. You can certainly tear it in half. You go with one half to the bank, they'll give you nothing. You tear it in half and bring them both pieces, they'll give you a new banknote. That's it. You've got enough raya. So what do I care if the melech, it's only the raya shabai, only the melech is telling me I accept other rayas also. If I take a shtar and burn it, and I have 2 Eidim who see me burn a shtar, a real shtar, not Franz Joseph's shtar, Melech, and I have 2 Eidim who tell me what's in the shtar, I can go to business. The worst of all, they can be made that this wasn't the shtar. It's from Queen Bebezendami, more or less. They won't be able to calculate from Lukuchas, but a Milval pet certainly will be worth. Why need this proof that it happened? And Baruch Hashem, Franz Yossel is from the Chassidim Elam, and he doesn't try to take advantage of these Jews. They come with substantial raya. He sees they're not lying, so he does what's right, fair and equitable. He practices equity also. So what is all of the big problems here? Then when he's finished with all of this, and he tells me for reasons that you know, because Rabbi Javari told you last week, and we spoke about it before, he's telling me that a banknote is Oimid L'Raya because of Pekudas HaMelech, and Din Malchus Adina, he throws in Deraisa yet, Din Malchus Adina, and the Melech is Geiser V'Omer, and therefore it's Tiva, it becomes Tiva because of the Gzeres HaMelech. Now, remember, just parenthetically, that the Rambam says, how do I know who's a melech, who's not a melech? If it's Tiva Yitzvayla, that's the raya that I made him a melech. And if he's a melech, he has the right to mint coins. It's enshrined in our constitution. It came from the prerogatives of the melech. I think I must have said that before. I'm not going to repeat it again. That's what the melech does. With deraisa, not a deraisa, I couldn't care less, but I think it is a deraisa. Why not? And that leaves me with my problem. He tells me it's good even for hektish. In two separate places. Because I'm giving you to a hedjit, to Gizper's a hedjit. Good. I can be paid hektatious. I can be paid by Sheni because the picture is with Sarto Kesef. I think the Yeshkolkim. But okay, the picture it's Kesef Tzoruf because it's got a picture on it. What's his big problem? His big problem is Pidyon Aben, because sure, it's Gativa because the Melech said so. But they can't be Goyser on the Melech Malachei HaMelachim. He is the King of Kings, and he doesn't have to accept what they're saying downstairs. And I don't understand that either. Who made him a Melech in the first place? Liya Kesef, Liya Zov. What difference does it make? He doesn't. The Rav Mishlam doesn't need the Kesef. He doesn't need the Zov. He doesn't need the Tiva. He doesn't need the Shtar. Only he gave the Melech the Koyach. If he gave us, whoever it is, the Haskomas HaSoykrim to make Kesef Tiva, so he gave the Melech the Koyach to make it Tiva. Why do you need Haskomas HaSoykrim for? Why is the Melech worse than Haskomas HaSoykrim? If Haskomas HaSoykrim can bind the Melech Malachei HaMelachim, why can't a human Melech bind him the same way? It's all for purposes of mitzvahs. It's all for, this system, and make the system work. That's what the Mishnah wanted. What's his big problem with Pidyon Aben? And then finally comes Ribis Tzorachim. He doesn't know what the status of this is for purposes of Ribis. He doesn't, he tells me it's Tiva for everything else. Why shouldn't it be Tiva for Ribis also? He may be telling me, I don't know, go back to Rabbi Willig's first year. Is Hilchos Ribis in your day, or is it in Choshen Mishpat? He may be masuked all of this. So in Choshen Mishpat, I can do whatever I want. In your day, it becomes kind of a suffix Raisa Chumrah. In all the other cases, it didn't make any difference. I have absolutely no idea with regard to all of this. Now, let's talk about American currency for a second. American currency, I think most people would say, is legal tender. Why is it legal tender? Why do I accept it? I accept it because when I pull out a banknote from my, once upon, again, I don't want to repeat all of this, but once upon a time I could have gone to the bank and gotten a silver dollar in exchange for a silver certificate. I can't do that anymore, number one, because there's no silver certificates in circulation. You can buy it in a coin dealer. And number two, the bank does not have any silver dollars. I remember when they changed it, I had a chaver in the yeshiva, and a sister. He sent his sister. He didn't want no bittul Torah. They would play this game for a month. He was taking. He gave a $10 bill or $20 bill, and he took coins, silver coins. They were mixed up with non-silver coins, the new ones that came out. He took out all the silver ones, and he went back, and he was mamalit with a couple of pieces of paper, and he got his $10 bill back. Then he went to the next bank and did the same thing. When he was finished with the day, he had silver coins, which were worth more than a quarter. And he went to where they sell these things on 47th Street. He went and he got money for it. It was big money. He made a lot of money doing this, but it didn't last very long. It didn't last very long because it didn't take very, very long for the silver coins to be taken out out of circulation totally and completely. They solved the dollar bills they took out. That was easy. You read it. They weren't going to go look for every quarter or a dollar. Is it silver or is it the fake? Now, the one we replaced it with. So they kept on sending it back to the banks in the rolls. And this guy was smart enough to figure this out. So as long as they were sending it back to the bank, and every day was fewer and fewer of these, but he was making money on it. That was the real silver. But in any event, once upon a time, you could get silver for the silver dollar. I only remember $1 bills. Maybe people can remember when there were $5 and $10 bills that said silver certificates on them. I don't think I ever saw one. Some of the people can remember, I don't know. But that was because they took those out of circulation long before me. So today I go and it says that what makes this a legal tender? Because it says this is legal tender for all debts, private and public and private. It's a legend on the top. I be Aldusi. I thought that meant Nischayev Reishel Melech. This is a Melech Shel Chesed, Moshe calls it. Once upon a time, you didn't take the Melech's coinage off with your head. Nischayev Reishel Melech, as recent as the Chasam Sofer. Amerik's a Malchus Shel Chesed. You don't want to take the coin, so we'll not suit you. That's the fine. The fine is you don't take my currency, says the Secretary of the Treasury, or his boss. You don't take it, you'll get nothing. So that's why, even though I know that what they give me every month, and I go to the bank and I get silver certificates for it, or Federal Reserve notes for it, I'm sorry. I know it's worthless, but I play the game because there's no other game in town. If I don't take it, I'm not getting anything else. So I go along with it, but I know better. So that's what it sounded like to me. I say Bieldusi, and I thought that was Nischayev Reishel Melech. The fact that you can punish me by not giving me anything else if I refuse to take this shtar on the Eitzer HaMelech. But I got wiser in my old age. I know it's not true. Bialdusi, I thought that you cannot denominate a contract in Japanese yen and expect to get Japanese yen. I thought that's what they're answering. That's the Melech. You take in my Medina, you take my coins. You can't go bring me Saudi Arabian coins or who knows what. You got to use American coins here. And if you make a contract that pay in yen, the court won't look at it. It's like an illegal contract. The courts don't get their hands dirty with illegal contracts. The Melech said you're not allowed to do this. It's an illegal contract. Goodbye, good luck. Then I discovered that it just isn't true. That I can write a contract that will be payable in yen, only there's a little wrinkle here. If I go to court and say, this guy promised me 1,000,000 yen for 100,000 widgets, I want my yen, the court will say, you're entitled to damages. You can't get yen because we can't give you yen. It's not currency here. I can't force anybody to give you yen, but I can force you to give its value in dollars. So why do I write it in yen in the first place? Because I know the currencies fluctuate and I want the value of the yen. I'm not betting on the dollar. I think the dollar is going to go down. I think the yen is going to go up. So that's why I did it. And I'll be paid for it, and the court will enforce it. I think it's enforceable. And I think it goes beyond that. I think, and here I have no case law, and I don't think there's a case out there, and I may be wrong, but I think I can give you a hypothetical, and I do not know of any case that actually happened. I have somebody in Japan, and I wrote him a contract, I'll pay him in yen, and Japan has become like Russia was in the bad old days. You can't bring any valuta, you can't bring foreign currency in, you can't take any foreign currency out. You can't bring any dollars into Japan, and you can't take them out of Japan. So if this guy has a contract, he's getting the compensation. The damage is not being paid in yen. What's he going to do? He's going to have to go to Japan with his yen. With his dollars, but they won't let him in with his dollars. You're not allowed to bring it in. So this guy has nothing he can do with it. I would make the case for him that he's entitled to equitable relief, and therefore he's entitled to specific performance. You can get specific performance in the American court, not usually. When money isn't going to satisfy the person because he needs something else, then you get specific performance. The classic case is real estate. You don't tell me you're going to give me damages for not going to closing after you made a contract. Every piece of real estate is unique. You're going to give me money. Who needs the money? I want the real estate. Give me the money. You won't get specific performance in other places. I know that if I sign a contract to sing in the Met, I can't get specific performance. Not because there's any way to pay them for my not singing. They will get all the things they lost in the box office. Foregone profits is also consequential damages. But I forget about what they teach in law school. There are other theories, but I think the simplest theory is that court knows how to seize money, but court does not know how to teach a frog to croak. I'll go to the Met and I won't sing. So what are you going to do? It's impossible to get specific performance for these things. But if you can show that specific performance is a remedy and there's no other remedy, you'll get it. And I think that's true even with a contract that's denominated in yen. If you can't get satisfaction or satisfactory compensation in some other way, and I gave you a scenario, it's only fair and equitable that we should force him to pay yen. Go buy yen and give it to him. He can't do anything with the dollars. So that it seems to me that it's not Xeris HaMelech anymore. So I'm left without Sam Sefer. Till now, Sam Sefer was telling me it was a shtar on the Yetzer HaMelech, and now it turns out that the Chayav Rishon Melech. That's what gives it value. So it's taken for the crucial point is that I'm taking it for itself, for its intrinsic value, because it values my head, and not its instrumental value, meaning what I can buy with it. A shtar is worthless to me. Lots of pizza is useless. The only thing I can do with a shtar is trade it for something else. So it's not gufei moment. But if I needed to protect my head, that's called gufei moment. You're telling me that this is needed to keep me out of jail, or needed so that I should be able to spend it. But it turns out that there's no such halacha. I can get yen instead of this. So it's not in Chayav Rishon Melech. There's no punishment for not taking it. So what makes it a shtar? It's not a shtar altogether. Whatever it is, a shtar, it's not. So that's why I said that the Sam Sefer is totally irrelevant. And if you will ask the Sam Sefer, and what about our money? So I can say one of two things. Either he'll tell you what I'm going to say later is correct, or he will say it's monopoly money. And what about monopoly money? It's got no shavius at all. If it has no shavius at all, then forget about kids and gezel from a cotton. Why can't I go steal money if it has no shavius? There's no shavius altogether, and it's not a shtar. We already established that it's not the Sam Sefer shtar. There's no way the Sam Sefer can hold that an American greenback is a shtar. At least I think. Now, the lawyers may disagree with me, but I think there's no way that it can be interpreted as a shtar in Dinei Yisrael. And that's because it's not a shtar for the Melech. If he's not a shtar for him, how can it be a shtar for me? So it seems to me that either it's worthless, in which case all bets are off. There is no such thing as money. It's really smoke and mirrors. And not only don't I have ribis problems, but I can go rob a bank and nobody can do anything with me in the soil. I took things that are valueless. So that it seems to me that if you talk about, forget American currency, if you talk about fiat money and you tell me that this is monopoly money, you can convince me that in the state of monopoly, wherever this is Picheis, that it's real money. And that there's ribis there also. If the kids are playing a game and they're not allowed to do this in terms of the laws of monopoly, the way it's played usually. There are variants of the game, don't confuse me. But you're not allowed to borrow money in Monopoly because there's nobody to lend you the money. It doesn't work that way. But if I could, do something illegal by asking somebody, give me $2 and I'll give you back a $5 three steps later, 3 chances later in the game, I think it might even be ribus deraisa, unless we realize it's achisa sinai. If the kids are taking it seriously and they're living in the state of monopoly and it's fiat money, I think it'd be an issur deraisa, and I'm the first one to say it's true. And why? If you ask me why, I can only say because, of course, he knew the Chazon Ish. He knew the Chazon Ish was Haskomas HaSoichrim. It was Haskoma, all the kids playing Monopoly. Haskoma, all these people running around the street. That's what makes it Tiva. And he had a problem because what he had wasn't Tiva. It wasn't Haskomas HaSoichrim. It was a Shtar Yitzer HaMelech. He had his own little private problem, and he said whatever he said to resolve it. To me, it wasn't the problem. I didn't have to resolve it. But if yes, he resolved it, finished, Shalom Al Yisrael. I don't see a machlokes between the Chazon Ish and the the Chassam Sofer. I think that the Chazon Ish understood the Chassam Sofer understood the Chazon Ish very well. Only he was a little bit earlier and he took it for granted. He didn't think he had to put it in writing. For us, he had to put it in writing. So Chazon Ish came along and put it in writing. But if I'm right now, then the first Chidush, or the first I suppose the first outrageous thing I'm saying is that fiat money is money. And not only is there gezel for fiat money, which I think is a chiddush, if you don't believe me, if you don't take my whole yisod. And number two, there's ribis on fiat money also. And nobody ever said differently. Weimar Republic, where everybody knew it was worthless. They took it anyway. They didn't want to, but they took it anyway. You're telling me there was no sigsol, there was no problem of ribis in the Weimar Republic. It was fiat money. If you tell me that the Chassam Sofer is the last, anyway, Haskamas HaSoichim, yeah, it wasn't Haskamas HaSoichim. So you tell me some Achlikas, the Chazon Ish, and the Chassam Sofer, whether it was Kesef in the Weimar Republic, I can't buy that. It seems to me that there's no Machlikas, it was money, and everything that proceeds therefrom. Now, if I'm right with that, then, I mean, Chiddush, I don't know if it's a Chiddush, but I think that fiat money is better than the American greenback. That would be good. I wouldn't have any better in terms of what I have to say. It'd be easier. We could close up and go home. American money is fiat money. We said fiat money is money, and finished. Goodbye. American money is, I call the hybrid. Why do I call it a hybrid? It's not really a hybrid. It's something totally different. How do you get money in the first place? You get money because there's something called tiva and a bank, Rothschild. The banks before we had American currency, or before U.S. greenbacks. The banks took money and they gave you little chits. And you could take the chit and go back to the bank and you would get specie. You'd get a silver coin, you'd get a gold coin, you get a gold bar. I don't know what you would get, but you could actually ask for it and you would get it. So what was this? Like a shtar, not on the Yitzhak HaMelech, but a shtar on Rothschild, the Gvir HaYisr Godel, which he says is a shtar. That was a shtar, a real shtar. When the Melech, the king, the U.S. government began issuing coins, it had money in Fort Knox, and it was a silver certificate. Were there gold certificates once upon a time? I suspect there were gold certificates once upon a time. And it was a shtar on the Eitzer HaMelech, and I had to talk about the Chassam Sofer. But I went to the bank, and they gave me whatever gold and silver I wanted. No more. Don't get any gold and silver. Not only that, but worse, and this is where people get a little bit confused, all the gold in Fort Knox will not satisfy 1%, maybe 2%, I don't know the exact figures, of all the greenbacks that are out there. There are many, many more greenbacks than there is gold in the Eitzer HaMelech. Now, you have to remember that gold has a certain value. Once upon a time in Yemei Chazal, it was gold to silver 25 to 1. When we began learning Hilchas Ribis a couple of decades ago, the exchange rate in New York was, the silver was also approximately $5 an ounce, I think. I don't know the exact value of silver. I do know the exact value of gold as of yesterday morning. All I had to do was take today's times, and I discovered that gold is $3,228 or something of the sort per ounce. A couple of months ago, when we talked about the same issue, what is gold and what is silver, it was significantly less. It was 2,000 something. Gold went up almost a third in a relatively brief period of time. Now, why? You can figure that out as well as I can figure it out. Why is gold worth so much more per ounce than silver? Chazal 25 to 1. What happened? I'll tell you what happened. What happened was they discovered the New World. And in the New World, there was lots and lots of silver, which means supply and demand. The value of silver went down against the gold because there's more silver around. When you're talking about $500 an ounce or $2,300 an ounce, you're talking about the relative value of one against the other, or at least that's what you seem to be saying. And now it went all the way up. What made it go up? I'll tell you a little story. It's got nothing to do with anything. And I don't even know why the story happened. But in the early days of the pandemic, one of my balabatim, he's a doctor, young doctor, but I suspect he has a few dollars. He calls me on the phone. He wants financial advice. He wants to know what he should invest in. He wants to know whether he should have money in the stock market, or should he put it in a certificate of deposits, or maybe even gold. And I answered him and I said, there's one thing, I don't know anything about the stock market, I don't know anything about gold, I can tell you only one thing. A little bit about economics I picked up, not that I ever studied economics, I'm not an economist. I know one thing. I know that they just gave everybody, what was it, $1,200. It was called it had a word for it. Stimulus. It was called a stimulus. They gave me $1,200, and Trump wants me to be thankful forever after for him giving me $1,200. You know something? He cost me a lot of money. He didn't give me any money. He thinks he did, or he wants to lie and tell me he did. You know what happened? Inflation. The inflation ate up more than the $1,200. That's exactly what I told this young man. I can tell you, look, there is no way in the world that in this pandemic, with the stimulus, that there's not going to be inflation. If there's going to be inflation, protect yourself against inflation. Don't think that if you buy a CD, you're protecting yourself. You buy a CD, you're not protecting yourself, because in the history of Western money, there's always been inflation. There always will be inflation until we get to the Weimar Republic, in which case all bets are off. And if the CD is not giving you at least the rate of inflation, every time you put money in the bank, you're throwing the money away. I have trouble explaining that, to my wife and to my mother, Oleha Shalom. Neither one is a dummy. But it's hard to explain to them why it is that putting money in the CD, not that there's much involved here, that putting money in the CD is throw your money away. Now you may tell me that you have no option. There are other options. But don't tell me the other is a risk and this is no risk. Of course it's a risk. It's more than a risk. This is boring, it's a garbage. And the other, if you're smart, you know how to play the market or whatever else that the investors do to make money. But that's all because we have this phenomenon called inflation. So we have what we're dealing with when they begin issuing money against the gold in Fort Knox. And after a while, there's not enough gold in Fort Knox. Trump wants them to take money out of circulation. No one's going to do that. And that would kill the economy. But what happens? Again, it's economics 101 or even less than that. When you go to the bank and put money in the bank, it's a chizis einayim, and they do it purposely. What do you call it? You call it a deposit. If I have a piece of paper that says deposit slip, that's not a deposit, it's a sheker v'chosov. I'm not depositing money in the bank. They want you to think what some of these people I referred to before think, that they took your money and they went back in the vault, they put it in the vault, and when you want it, you come back, you'll take it out.
My Sporkassa.
The Sporkassa was different. The Sporkassa was a piggy bank. That's Sporkassa is a credit. They knew already.
I thought it was one drawer says Cooper, one drawer says Sultan on it.
No. The Sporkassa didn't say that. No. That they were too sophisticated for that. Rothschild couldn't have made any money that way. Okay. All right. But what does the bank do? The bank goes to the Federal Reserve, and it says the Federal Reserve, look, we don't have any gold. And you already issued as many greenbacks as you're going to issue against the gold. But I got something else. I've got mortgages. We lent this money to people, and they gave us mortgages as collateral. Who says that you lend money only against gold? Lend me money against mortgages. And whoever is telling the Federal Reserve what to do said, you're a brilliant economist. Why can't I use mortgages to back the currency? So they proceed to take the mortgage. And the mortgage is nothing more than a shtar chayv, because they already got your money. The bank has no money. All I have from you is a mortgage, and I'm lending money against the mortgage. Now, so I lent the same money twice. But the bank is smarter than that. when the Federal Reserve won't lend you 100 pennies for a dollar. They'll lend you what, 90 cents on the dollar. They give you 90 cents on the dollar. So now if it was $1,000 mortgage, I have $900. I go back to my bank and I can only issue a mortgage for $900. So next morning I have only $900 to lend and I get interest on $900. So now I've already earned interest on the 1,000 and interest on 900. And I go back to the Federal Reserve and I say, here's another mortgage. Give me again 90%. And then you get what, $81. I call this $100 factorial. The mathematicians know exactly how much you're going to get. How much interest is the bank getting on your $100? They're giving you 3%, and they think they're being very nice to you because it's more than inflation, so they would hope. But they can't run their banks on 3%. They're getting 50% by the time they're finished because they lent the same money over and over and over again. And this is all kosher v'yosher. Who says it has to be backed by gold? It's backed by mortgages also. Fine. Economy would be fine. I have no problems. I wouldn't have problems with derivatives. Everything would be fine. Except there's one big problem. There's one malva who doesn't have to give collateral. You and I go to the bank, $100, $200, maybe they'll give us, but we're a bunch of schlemazels. They're not going to give us any real money. Real money, you got to produce some collateral. There's only one malva who gets real money without collateral, and that's called the U.S. government. The U.S. government goes and says, and controls the money supply. They borrow as much as they want, and they don't have to borrow only what they need. They can borrow more than they need for their reasons. And what's it backed by? Two answers. One, by nothing. It's fiat money. Or full faith and credit to the United States. What is full faith and credit to the United States? I know what it means, and let no professor of economics confuse you. What the city doesn't have the right of coinage. It can't. It's a reserve power to this government. What does the city do when it wants to borrow from a bank that has nothing to give for collateral? It gives tax receipts. Because the city can levy taxes, the state can levy taxes. And the bank knows this, there's no limit. Their bank will limit up to the amount that they can tax without forcing everybody into bankruptcy. Because if you're bankrupt, nobody's going to pay taxes. So whatever full faith and credit means, I know what it means. Let them tell you what they want. Full faith and credit means our power of taxation. We're good for the money because I can always get it. What do you care whether I have it or not? It's yeshloi. I'll go and I'll levy taxes and I'll get it. Don't let anybody tell you that it's backed by the courthouse in Foley Square, or by the domicile called the White House, or by the redwoods in Yellowstone National Park. That's what some people will tell you, all the great assets of the government. I don't know what they are and what they could possibly be, but it's irrelevant. That's not what full faith and credit means. Full faith and credit means this kind of a chizas einaim. Is it there? It's not there. Does it work? It works. So that was in halacha. I called it a hybrid. Some of it is backed by valuta, and a mortgage, as far as I'm concerned, is valuta. And some of it is the Melech's promise. It's not a shtar. The Melech is saying, take my word for it. When you need it, I'll give it to you. It's not even a shtar or it's Melech. It's fiat money. But it all goes in the same kabutel. It's one big pot. I know that there's nothing, I know. It's a secret, so please don't tell anybody outside this room. I think we can, trust the people who watch the tape, but don't let people know that anything beyond the value that's presented to the Federal Reserve window is anything but smoke and mirrors. That's all it is. But we pretend it's not because we think this is thing which we call the full faith and credit of the United States. But then, what is it really? It's got to be more than that. What I said was oversimplification. You know what's really happening? The United States will suddenly decide, no more taxes, nirvana. We're not going to charge taxes anymore. All you people who are holding notes, we're not going to tax, but you're entitled to get what you're entitled to get, which means all the gold in Fort Knox and whatever the government concedes for non-payment of the mortgages, because nobody's got money to pay the mortgage anymore. So what does this really mean? To me, it means something very onerous. It means that when the Treasury started issuing money without real backing, it was diluting the backing. There were X number of gold dollars in Fort Knox. Let's say there were 1 million. Till now, I had $1 million in gold coin out there. Now I'm not allowed to own gold coin anymore, but I have $2 million of certificates, which in theory I can trade in for whatever is in Fort Knox. So each one of these is worth 50 cents, right? If I had to liquidate whatever the government is holding and take money for it, it would be called Picheis al hamatbea, or Picheis al hamatbea. The dollar was worth 1 ounce yesterday, and today it's worth a half an ounce. It's called Picheis al hamatbea. So what is the halacha where it's Picheis al hamatbea? Picheis al hamatbea. What are we supposed to do? It seems to me that if we deal with a classic case of Picheis al hamatbea, we have a machlokes, the Rif and the Ravid. The Rif says that Picheis al hamatbea, which is the Rif, which is the Ravid. He says he gives him matbea yotze. Whatever it is, Picheis al hamatbea doesn't make any difference. And I have to give what is yotze in that particular case. And others say that it's not the case. Now, let me talk about for the Ravid. It seems to me that if I have to give you the full amount, again, I told you I don't want to get confused. It's easy to get confused here. If you're dealing with a Picheis al hamatbea, so the Rif says they have to give him the full value because it's stated the malva. And Marishdam. The Marishdam is difficult to understand. But he keeps saying the malva can't lose. He's repeating to me over and over again the lashon in a different context, obviously. But he's telling me to say the malva can't lose here. The malva lent. He wants to get what he got back. That's say the malva. And I have to ask a kasha on the Rif. Then what do you mean say the malva? If it's ribis, it's ribis. Everything. Yeah. You're talking about he's Picheis al hamatbea, and you're telling me the malva can't lose. You talk like a capitalist. Why shouldn't the malva have a say that we have a chumash? The chumash says that the ribis is also. So why is it say to the malva? So it has to be because it's not ribis. Why isn't it ribis? Because Picheis al hamatbea, this is what I gave you. This is what I'm entitled to get back. According to the Ravid, he says, who cares about Pseida de Malva? You get only what it was worth. You get what it's worth is what it says. The number of matbeas that there were before, you get the same number of matbeas now. And who cares whether you get the same value when you spend it in the shuk? The matbea is the matbea. So it would seem to me, this is the first outrageous thing for the day. It would seem to me that according to the Rif, everything is tzomud to what? Not to Yekar HaChaim. It's tzomud to something else. Yekar HaChaim, cost of living, is inflation. There is a different kind of inflation which determines the value of the currency. What is that? The number of greenbacks in circulation. Now, that I said before, there's got to be inflation if you have more greenbacks in circulation because supply and demand. How many greenbacks are there in circulation on any given day? I don't know that because New York Times didn't tell me. But you don't have to be a great chacham to find out. Anybody can find it out. It's there. Look in the computer. You'll know how many dollars there were, and if they even have two cheshbonos. One is just cash, and the other is cash plus checks. We'll deal with cash. They'll know how much there was yesterday and how much there was today. Today there's more than there was yesterday, I can pretty much guarantee. Now, if we have inflation today over yesterday, I know exactly how much is attributable to Picheis al hamatbea. Every time you write a new Federal Reserve note, you are diminishing the backing of each Federal Reserve note. The inflation is going to go up exactly proportionate to the increase in the number of, don't confuse me with the checks, with the number of dollars in circulation. And I can predict that. I don't predict the number in circulation because I know it. Just look it up. I can predict the inflation insofar as the inflation is tied, samud, to the increased number of Federal Reserve notes in circulation. The Bekim can do that to a fraction of a penny. That much samud, I think you're entitled in Bezdin without samud. Chiddush Godel, according to the Rif. I go into the Bezdin and I say, it's Picheis HaMatbe'a. How do I Picheis HaMatbe'a? I took out my economics textbooks. I proved it to you. Give me more, because if the piece of paper that you gave me today is worth less than the piece of paper was yesterday, because you chopped off part of the piece of paper. You used it to back two different accounts. No, and so that I don't even have to claim. Don't have to make it so good. For the Ravid, can't do these things. Whatever I give you, that's what I give back. So I'm, you want to say Kimli? You'll play Kimli whenever you go to Bez and play Kimli. But what I really want to say is I've described this as a kind of a hybrid currency. It's not really a hybrid currency. It's a currency which is backed in part and not backed in part. Some of it is backed and some of it is fiat. And the fiat is kloimershed, attached to what's real. Because in theory, I'm supposed to be able to get back from whatever is backing all of this. And if you're talking about liquidating, that would go into what is liquidating. So that if we were, again, I don't want to talk about things I talked about before. The fact that I can't go and say I want to liquidate doesn't mean anything. We talked about the corporations. I made a deal with the government. I won't try to liquidate until you go bankrupt. We made a deal with the corporation. I can't say good or good until you go bankrupt. But in the meantime, we know exactly what's going on. We know how to do the ledgers. We just taught you how to do the ledgers. Call in an economist to explain all of this to you. So that is, kind of a little minor chiddush that we have a machlekes rishonim, how much you can claim when you have an ordinary ordinary dollar for dollar, matbe'a for matbe'a, without making it samud. It seems to me it's the Rif, you've got a pretty strong claim. Now, kasha is, what about for the Ravid? For the Ravid, it's not automatic. Question is, for the Ravid, could I make a shtar chayv that indexes it to exactly what the Rif calls the index? We already explained all this for the Rif. And for the Rif, it's automatic. For the Ravid, in order not to have to say Kimli, can I write an agreement which will index it to whatever I would get had the halacha been like the Rif? And how would I manage to do that? I don't think it's very hard at all. And that comes, the next little piece. Next little piece is a Gemara and a Tosfos, and one has nothing to do with the other. The Gemara says, Tzadik Zayid Amud Beis. Says the Gemara, Hamal HaMatbe'a v'Hisifu olav. Don't ask me why, when, or how. The Rishonim I looked for don't explain me why the Melech did this. I know why the Melech is Picheis HaMatbe'a. He takes 10 coins and he clips them, and he hands you back 10 coins, but each one weighs less than each of the coins they took in. He clips 1/10 of its weight, and he ends up with profit. What does he do? To be Picheis HaMatbe'a, he has to take two coins, or 3 coins, and give you back 2, each one which is 1.5 of the old ones. What's he gained from this? I suspect that he has gained something from it, but that's not my problem. But he did it. I told you that's part of the PhD problem. Why people were doing things like that. He was meisif on the matbe'a means he was meisif on the weight of the matbe'a by the time we get to the end of the Gemara. Mahu. So says the Gemara, Naisonly matbe'a yitze beisishah. You have to get, I borrowed 10 gold coins. They weighed 10 ounces. Each one's 1.5 ounces. So I give you back 10 gold coins. Each one says 1 ounce, 1 mark, 1 shilling, 1 whatever. And I give you back 10 coins. It's the same coin. It says the same name on it. What's it got to do with the weight? Nothing. But it's called the same thing. Vafilu kinafia, says the Gemara. You think even if it's, I don't know how big a nafia was, but even if it was a nafia that you increased it that much, you were meisif. And so Mar'in, Amarle afilu ki trartia. So one was 1.5, now it's 2 ounces instead of 1 ounce. Amarlin. So he says, well, because Xylin Payray, what's going on here? This doesn't make sense. The Payris are going to be cheap. I'm going to get more Payris for any one of these gold coins because there's more gold in circulation. Omer Ashi, Chazinon, Imach Mastivizil, Menakin. If it's because of the tiva inochinami, v'imach mistarazil lemenakim vei. If it's because there was geshomim, says Rashi, and there's really a lot of more peiros, then it will be menakim. Otherwise, if it's only because of the weight of the coin, we're not going to be menakim because of the weight of the coin. V'ochoshevach linyan. Well, who are you trying to fool here? I gave you more species. I call that ribis. I gave you 1 ounce, and you gave me back 2 ounces. Why isn't that ribis? Look, he had Rav Papa, Rav Funda, Breder of Yeshua, Avdi Uvda Bezuzi, der Gaminus Tayo. They did this with the Zuzim of Argaminus. They did it, and it was a significant amount, it was way heavier, and they got away with this. So, first of all, what's the Gemara asking? The Gemara says, Lini Nasko. It says Rashi, if there's linear naska, there's more naska. In bol laticho and velasas mehen grew toys, which I presume are little coins. Yesh yeser. From 2 ounces, I get more ounce coins than I did from 1 ounce. Havi ribis. It's a more kasha. It's havi ribis. How can you get away with all of this? And the Gemara turns around and says, as long as it's like Zuzi dan Rumius Tayo, it's ad Yud Betambe. You can get away with this if it's only 20%. A fifth. More than a fifth, you can't get away with it. I don't know what's the difference, a fifth or a tenth or double. What's the difference? Ribis is ribis. What's the shear of ribis? It's not like we know it's got a shear. And this sounds to me like ribis gomer. And how can you get around all of this? Comes along the Rosh and says, it's mechzik ribis. It's not real ribis. It's only real ribis. It's only Mexican ribis. So what's the Rosh telling me? The Rosh is telling me that with Naska for Nasa is only Mexican ribis. I don't care how much the weight is. Weight is irrelevant. Filu, Tarya. Only it seems that you can't get away with more than 20%. As you'll ask me, why according to the Rosh? There must be some kind of, that's the Drabbana. Midrash people get away with that too. Only it doesn't look very nice. So the Chachamim were guys on it. That's how I would learn the sugi according to the Rosh. Now, I have one other source, and then we see what's. But I have a kasha. Why? How do you get away with this altogether? It's really ribis. Then I have a tesis. The tesis is one blood earlier. It says the Gemara. Hamal v'schaveri hamatbe'a v'nifsalo hamatbe'a. Rav Omar neisen lematbe'a yitzu b'seshoah. And Shmuel says, it's worthless, so what am I supposed to do? So I give you hamatbea, I suppose we'll do with the francs, forget about the shkolim. We have a new franc for the old francs, but it's a new franc, so I take the 10 old francs, and I give you a new franc, it's hamatbea, you have to take, I owe you 100 francs, I owe you 100 new francs. Or, if there's somebody else will take the old francs, so here's the old francs, go to Mishon. Now, Rashi says that we're dealing about framaktia. Merchandise. This is what happens with merchandise. Taisa says Rashi is wrong. What does Taisa say? He says, he asks kashas on Rashi. Then he proceeds to say, what does he say? Says Rashi, it's a Taisa that there's no near lefarish, ein chiluk bein mecher from maktia. Putting back all my old kashas. He says, Mecher and Farmaktia and Alvar are going to be the same. Bein Halvomos, Umayr Shehisnima Almanashi Shalom Mois. We're only talking about a person who made a deal. I'm going to pay money. So since I paid money, now we've got this whole business of whether I can have to give you real money. That means whatever the old ones are worth, or go take it and go to Mishon and spend it there. V'kivin shepirishloi kach stoma de milsa. Stoma de milsa, I told you that I'm going to pay you mo'ois. So therefore, I have to give you the old mois, even though it's who knows how much. I see one principle, and again, I think it's in Sivas Halacha. I said it in something else, but I think it's muchach from here also. I think that there are two ways I can be mechayev myself. I can be mechayev myself either to give you a certain amount of money. It's the chiyuv. Pure shleimois. I'm giving you money. I can't give you anything else. Shavik kesef, who worry about. But the shavik kesef, only what the money would be worth if I gave you the money now. But mechayev myself, the chiyuv is denominated in mois. Or I can say, you gave me a bushel of wheat. I owe you the value of a bushel of wheat. How I pay it to use my business. Shavik kesef. Whatever it's Picheis halva, that's what I'll pay you some other time. And I can do this in one of two ways. There's only one thing I can't use this with. I can't do it with so, which is everything. I can't promise you that I will give you the value of a saw. Why can't I promise that I'll give you the value of the saw? Because Chacham said it's also. They made a takona. Otherwise, saw b'saw mechuyev mid'oraisa. Now I want to know a small little side question. Saw b'saw should be mutar mid'oraisa, even though and we see that's shot in the Gemara here also. One naska for another naska, saw b'saw. I'm giving you one coin for another, only it turns out that's even mutter. But how? It's ribis. Rashi tells me it's ribis. How can I do something like that? The answer is really very simple. I can do something like that because saw b'saw means giving you one saw for another saw. Is every saw equal? There can't be two saws that are equal. Chita b'chita. Can you go measure two chitim that should be exactly the same? Impossible, it should be the same. Matbe'a b'matbe'a. A shekel for a shekel. The two shkolim aren't going to weigh the same. So 50% of the time, I'm going to be giving you ribis. Elamai, that's not called ribis. I wasn't mechayev myself more than I took. I was mechayev a saw. I was mechayev a chita. And I gave you back a chita. What do you want from me? A chita's a chita. Doesn't have to do with the weight. And what if it's a naska b'naska? It's a British pound that's worth an ounce, and now I got another British pound that's worth 2 ounces. What's the difference? So. It's a pound. It's a pound. It's got the same. It's called a naska. Yeah, not called naska. It's called a hamatbea. Like the chita is called a hamatbea. Comes along the Gemara and says, "Yeah, you can't get away with this more than 20%." That's the Rabbanon afterwards. But basically, this was my hischayvus. My hischayvus was to give you back even a naska, and that's what I would do. Now and what about if I do this saw b'saw? I can't do saw b'saw with a saw, but I can do it naska b'naska. Why can I do it naska b'naska? Because they never made a takona not to borrow naska b'naska. That's how you can get away with it. That's all. Naska b'naska, when the price goes up, is really a saw b'saw. Only nobody made the gzeir, so nobody made the gzeir. Everything is fine. So now we come to Tosfos' case. Tosfos' case is I borrowed money and we made a haskama. The haskama is not that I'm going to pay you the value, but I'll denominate it in the hamatbeas. So I was mechayev myself matbeas. And look, guess what? I'm mechuyev to give you the matbeas. And I have to give you the matbeas because there's no problem here. I'm allowed to be mechayev myself in matbeas. Pramaktia with matbeas isn't called sobasah. I can either be mechayev myself pramaktia for pramaktia, which is sobasah I don't want to, or pramaktia for apples, or pramaktia for a specific coin. So I did it for a specific coin. That I'm allowed to do. And that's not called ribis because we just went through all this. It's not ribis. Why, according to the Rosh, is only Mexican ribis? Because it's really sobasah. Sobasah is not also. Sobasah is with heterogomim with raisa. The naska, I don't care how much it weighs until we get to a certain point. Now, parenthetically, maybe if it's double, it's a little bit too much. And Rashi says that double is raisa. Yeah, one chita, second chita, one weighs 1 millimeter, one tenth of an ounce, and the other weighs 1.5 tenths of an ounce. That's okay. But by the time you get to 2 tenths of an ounce, it's too much. That's already ribis raisa. Why? Because everybody knows that two chitim, I can't tell the difference between one and the other. When you give me a giant chita, a double-sized chita, everybody sees that. In Nazca, certainly everybody sees that, and that you can't do. You can't. That's right. That I'm not mechuyev to be miyashav Rashi, but if you start with the Rosh, everything is fine. So now I start going in reverse. If I can do all these things, when I borrow ordinarily, I'm borrowing to return, Rashi tells me, Stome, I'm going to return in specie. I borrowed 100 francs, so I'm going to give you back 100 francs. But that's because it was hamatbea, and that's always mutter. Do I have to have hamatbea? No. I can have hamatbea for something else. I can also have something else which I will repay in matbeas. And I will make the matbeas somud to how much from makti I would have to give you. I would have to give you so many chitim, and that's how I would denominate this. I'm denominating it chitim b'chitim, but I'm making a kind of a tanai here that if I want to, I can pay matbeas. I call that the reverse. Am I allowed to do this, to say I'll give you more matbeas? Ordinarily it's sobasor, except the one kind of time sobasor is mutter, is if it's matbea b'matbea. So even according to the Ravid, if I borrow money, I may really have to pay stome what it's worth. But I'm stipulating that I'm not going to pay stome what it's worth. I'm going to pay matbea b'matbea. Sobasor, terrible thing. This is Rabbanon. Only never made an Yisud Rabbanon. I'm making it somud according to the Ravid. And what is my tzmidah? My tzmidah is to the amount in circulation, the weight of each one of these Federal Reserve notes, which goes down all the time. But I'm stipulating that it be as many as is necessary to make up for the first, that the sobasor be equal to the first number of that I started with. And that if I'm right in the nature of American money, then it's heterogomer, because I'm in effect with an agreement. Naniach, that for the Ravid I have to put into writing, but I put it into writing, and putting it into writing means I've turned it into a kind of sobasor, and I can be mechayev myself to do this, and I'll have to pay what it's worth, not the number of coins that are in circulation out there. I hope I didn't confuse you. Nobody ever wrote a heteroskid this way.
Not yet.
Not yet. When I called hamatbe'a sobasor, I am not the first person who's used that kind of nomenclature. If you look in the Chochmas Odom, it's quoted in the Bris Yud anyway. It's the Chochmas Odom Kuf Lamed Beis. He tells me matbe'a can also be sobasor in the cases he's talking about, and the Bris Yehuda also talks about hamatbea that could be sobasor. Now again, if you're dealing with places that are dealing in foreign currencies, of course it's sobasor. That's payer and that's tiva. But I don't want to talk about it too much. But one of the things I'm leaving for this PhD student, I want him to tell me what the Chochmas Odom is talking about. I have no idea what it means. He's talking about. He says. V'chein hadin bebanknoten, ubedinoseinu kurim asige, v'chein bratim. I think he means brutes or something. I don't know what it means. The Holland. In Holland they had this, and I once upon a time thought he was talking about Shtar Yisrael Melech. I'm not quite sure he's talking about Shtar Yisrael Melech. He may have been talking about a banknote that we had in this country before we had a federal mint. The banks were issuing their own, and he tells us. And then he talks about what the Minik HaMedina was, and he talks about whether it would be sobasor or it wouldn't be sobasor. And it tells me that sometimes these things can be sobasor and sometimes they're not sobasor. And you have it in the Bris Yehuda more or less the same thing, that sometimes I don't know what's sobasor and what's not sobasor. I can conceive a situation in which everything is sobasor. I'm not sure in a hypothetical universe, which would have been Europe before the European Union and before the euro. I saw people running around Europe with not 10 wallets, but different compartments. They had British pounds, Swiss francs, German marks, and Swiss francs. And it depends where they went, what they used. Now, and as were all Yetzi among the suffering, they were all Yetzi in the same place. Is there any place where they were all Yetzi? Of course there were, in Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael, when there was inflation. Talked about last time before. Now, I think that they were both Yetzi. Does that make them both Sobasa? And again, I know that when we were buying a $1,000 appliance, nobody would take your shkolim. But if you went into a store, they would take either shkolim or they would take dollars. And they knew more or less what the shar was. And yeah, everybody, I know all the articles that really the standard was the dollar. How do I know the standard was really a dollar? It depends to whom. The businessman was a dollar. To the shlemazel in the street, it was still the pound. And he even walked around with two types of currencies. Which was the tifa and which wasn't the tifa? You can tell me both are tifa. You can tell me both are payra. Because there is no tifa. What do you do if there's no tifa? If there's no tifa, then if I lend $5 for $5, it's so. That's why I kept saying that I think the American dollar is a hybrid, because otherwise it's so. If you tell me that it's fiat money, it's so. What is this? Can't be. So it's got to be tiva in one sense, or it's got to be money, because otherwise it's so. I'm not the one who made it up. He's Maramas, whatever. It's complicated.